Hello and welcome. With the fall of Ryujinx, the big question is, what's next for Nintendo Switch emulation? Even though the situation is a bit unclear, that's what we're going to try to discuss today. First, the topic that's been circulating lately is the speculation that Nintendo offered a large sum of money to the Ryujinx team to abandon the project. I want to make it clear that if you're unsure about this, it's better to stop spreading the rumor. This only further harms emulation projects, and the developers themselves have denied this claim several times across various platforms. It's highly unlikely that this is happening. After Nintendo shut down Ryujinx, fear gripped almost every developer involved in emulating games from this company. To clarify, a cease and desist is a legal tool used by a company to tell you that you're working on something that belongs to them or that harms their interests, giving you the option to either stop immediately or face a lawsuit. With recent events, this simple threat is now enough to halt any project. Even though GDK is in Brazil, where emulator development isn't considered piracy, he would still have to dedicate resources and time to fight this in court. And if Ryujinx lost, they'd have to cover all the legal costs. Would the project's revenue be enough to cover those costs? When Nintendo threatened Yuzu in the past, many people signed up for Patreon to offer financial support. But even with more money coming in, Yuzu's team decided not to take the risk and accepted losing $2 million. If GDK were forced to pay $2 million, that would amount to more than 10 million reais, a sum that the average Brazilian won't earn in a lifetime. Do you think Ryujinx was making enough to fund a lawsuit of this magnitude? Some even claim that Ryujinx was irrelevant in the Switch emulation scene because it required high-end hardware to run games that Yuzu could handle on mid-range computers. Speaking of this so-called irrelevance of Ryujinx, only those who don't follow the recent changelogs could say that. Recently, fixes for games like Princess Peach, Lollipop Chainsaw, and Castlevania Dominus Collection were made by the Ryujinx team and later ported to Sudachi. And this isn't just about recent releases. Initially, Yuzu couldn't run Zelda Tears of the Kingdom, and they implemented several fixes written by the Ryujinx team. From the start, Ryujinx fixed the problems, and Yuzu copied them. In fact, there were times when Yuzu was accused of not giving proper credit for fixes that originally came from Ryujinx. So, if you're happily playing your games on Sudachi, know that many of the improvements you see on your screen are actually the result of Ryujinx's work. Now, talking about Sudachi, initially it seemed to be the savior for Yuzu forks, but today most of us realize that it's not quite like that. There's often an absurd gap between updates, and when new ones finally come out, they're just a few fixes for recent games, usually ported from Ryujinx. The reality is that Sudachi is basically a version of Yuzu that runs 5 extra games. The performance is the same, and there's no revolutionary functionality. It's just the best copy we have of the latest Yuzu version. Even the monthly memory fixes reported seem to have no real impact in practice. And without Ryujinx to keep fixing new games, Sudachi's progress will stagnate. However, until Nintendo also threatens Sudachi, it remains the only decent and safe emulator we have. But don't expect miracles or frequent updates. Since the first time I mentioned Sudachi, it's been 7 months and no significant improvement has appeared. Other projects have emerged, and the most promising was Suyu. But it didn't take more than 2 weeks for the community to realize the project was a joke, thanks to its lead developer, who acted quite immaturely. Soon, all developers abandoned the project, which was supposed to focus on performance hacks but ended prematurely. I'm sure most of you have already forgotten about Suyu. Now, the question is, who will have the courage to face Nintendo? Yuzu forks are quickly banned from GitHub because Nintendo sends DMCA notices as soon as possible. And since Yuzu's code now belongs to Nintendo, any attempt to continue its development is blocked. Even Discord communities are affected by Nintendo's actions, like what happened with Yuzu, which has already been banned from Discord 2 or 3 times. Whoever decides to take on the responsibility of continuing Yuzu or Ryujinx projects will essentially be walking on dangerous ground, with Nintendo lurking nearby. Many believe that maybe, within a year, with the launch of the Switch successor, things might change. But honestly, I don't believe that. The Switch is a console that has sold a lot, and it might even surpass the PlayStation 2 by the end of its life cycle. It's likely that Nintendo will continue releasing cross-gen games, just like they did with Zelda, Breath of the Wild, which came out for both the Wii U and Switch. And you know what that means. If many people have access to cross-gen games, the interest in buying the new console may decrease, since players will be able to enjoy the titles on PC with all the enhancements that only emulators can offer. And if the new console is similar to the Switch in terms of hardware and system, it will be relatively easy to improve an emulator to run Nintendo Switch 2. We could see a decent emulator for the new console within its first year, just like Dolphin did with the Wii. At the moment, many uncertainties remain. Both Yuzu and Ryujinx can run most of the games released for the Switch. But with Ryujinx's imminent ban, I suggest you back it up now before it becomes hard to find, just like the latest versions of Yuzu today. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.